Hi, and welcome to the 10 square meter workshop. People who want to automate or just make things that are very difficult to make by hand often ponder whether to get a 3D printer or a CNC machine. Well, of course you can have both, but in what order? I think there are very strong reasons why you should start with a 3D printer. Coming up after this. 3D printers and CNC machines have a lot of similarities in the way you use them, but also quite a lot of differences. And there's a great difference in the amount of effort they are to set up and use. The first consideration is, of course, price. You can get a perfectly workmanlike 3D printer for £200 to £400. A CNC machine will start more like £1,400 and increase as the size does. First comes assembly. Your CNC machine will not come looking like this. It will be a bag, or probably several bags of bits and pieces, nuts and bolts, which you have to assemble. This will take you from a few hours to a few days, depending on your level of expertise and the amount of setting up you do as you go along. The machine needs to be wired together to a controller, power supply, all the cabling through the drag chains to the motors. A 3D printer usually consists of two parts, the base unit and the yoke, and the two bolt together with a few bolts. You then have to connect the wiring. This all takes about 10 to 20 minutes. Once built, it needs a large and sturdy surface to rest on. Its alignment is crucial. The machine should be clamped firmly to the base, and indeed it should be adjusted by using test cuts to make sure your X and Y are at right angles to each other. You need a dust collection system. This can be a shop vac with a hose or something more elaborate and more permanent. To add to this, you need a dust shoe and a holder for it. These are rarely part of the machine itself, they're either extras or something you make. A 3D printer doesn't need any infrastructure. Just needs a space big enough to hold it, and a 3-pin plug. You then need a level base to hold your workpiece. This is usually machined by the CNC machine to give you a level surface. Another step. Adjustment of a 3D printer is usually pretty simple, you just have to level the bed. This is done in many ways, but it's often usually a simple method. The machine will go to a given point and you adjust for smoothness of a piece of paper using the wheel underneath. When that's ready, you go to the second one and adjust that one. Do this 4 or 5 times and your bed is level. This will last for quite a while. You can do several prints on one leveling. You will have to make or buy a set of clamps to hold your workpiece down. With a 3D printer there's no clamping involved, although it may make the surface adhesion better if you use some gunk just rubbed into the top of the bed. You'll also need a set of bits to cut the materials and maybe collets to hold them. First step after switching the machine on is to zero it, which is simple button press. Next you have to fit the tool that matches the tool path in your drawing. If you're using multiple tool paths with different tools, you have to change it at each point and then reset the height. Next you have to set the work 0. This must be at the same point as in your drawing. It has to be done by hand. Once you reach there, you then have to save that as work 0. Once work 0 has been set, you must remember to fit your dust shoe. Before starting the job. You must make sure your drawing matches both in size and orientation to the piece of wood that you are cutting. Otherwise you might find yourself machining away your clamps. A 3D printer doesn't need any of this setting up. It will automatically zero itself and put the print right in the middle of the plate. Well, that's the relevant hardware taken care of. But now they need instructions on what to do. And in both cases, this comes in the form of a G-code file. This is a list of instructions telling it what to do. And it's a system that's been around since the 50s and is used by almost all automatic machinery. It is of course produced by software running on a computer, and it comes in 2 stages. Firstly, you have to do the 3D design using a CAD program to define what exactly you want to do, and then that gets converted into the G-code that the machine recognizes. Although you may have a piece of software that does both for you, it's integrated. First, CNC milling. I, like many woodworkers, use Vectric software. This is extremely good at both laying out your design, generating toolpaths, and exporting the G-code file to your machine. It is, however, not free. It starts at a few £100 and goes up from there depending on the facilities. It's an excellent piece of software, and to me it is well worth the outlay. It is possible to find free software, but it is somewhat limited and a lot harder to learn. When it comes to 3D printers, there is a lot of software out there free to use for non-commercial use, of which Fusion 360, shown here, is probably the most popular. From this you export an STL file into a slicer. This generates the G-code. The most popular is probably Cura, which is also free. Although you can adjust almost everything in Cura, when you're starting out, just using the default values will work in most cases. As you gain experience, you can start optimizing. Of course, you don't have to design everything yourself, especially with a 3D printer. You just go on a site like Thingiverse, where there's tens of thousands of designs. Just download them, slice them, and print them. So, that was a brief overview of the intricacies of owning one of these machines. I hope you found it useful. Of course, if you have a real use for a CNC milling machine, by all means get one. But if you're undecided, I really think the 3D printer route first is the best idea. You're learning skills which will transfer, and they're a lot easier to get started. That's all for this time. See you next time.